Hello and welcome to the DFW Divorce Insider Podcast, answering all the questions you didn't know you had about family law. I'm your host, Matthew Eitzen, and today we're going to be talking about the financial side of the divorce process. And to help us do that, we have our guest for today, one of the partners here at Duffee and Eitzen, Jody Bender. Jody, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Matthew. How about you?
I'm doing just fine.
Learning how to adapt in this new age of coronavirus, aren't we?
Indeed we are. Indeed we are. And now, Jody, you actually live in Wichita Falls and are the lead attorney in our Wichita Falls office. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's something that a lot of people don't know about our firm.
Yes, that's correct. My family moved to Wichita Falls, Texas about 18 months ago, and I have stayed with Duffee and Eitzen. I love our firm and I love the people I work with, and my partners and I agreed that I could continue my practice there in the Metroplex as well as serving clients here in Wichita Falls. So I kind of do both. And fortunately, in the day and age that we live in, so much can be done electronically, as we're all learning with this whole coronavirus thing. So my practice is divided between the Metroplex and Wichita Falls, and it's been a wonderful experiment and allowed me to learn and grow and meet new people along the way.
Wonderful. And Jody's an essential part of the process here at Duffee and Eitzen. Now, our main topic today actually has nothing to do with coronavirus. The primary topic for the episode is the property side of divorce. However, because there is an evolving crisis going on out there, we do want to address one question that we've been getting a lot and that we think people probably have out there. And the question is, we've been getting a lot of people asking what to do, what they can do, what they should do, if their co-parent works in a field that is going to expose them to the coronavirus a lot, healthcare providers, that sort of thing. Do they have, if they're concerned about the welfare of their child, what should they do? What are their options? What is sort of the guidelines say that they should do? Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. And I know that that's a growing concern for families. First, let me start off with the Texas Supreme Court has issued guidance for all of the shelter in place orders, and county by county, they're calling them different things. Some cities have them, but the Texas Supreme Court has come out with guidance and basically said, regardless of those shelter in place orders, parents should be following the court order that's in place as far as possession and access to the children. So exchanges of the child should occur as normal, and those are considered essential activities. So the Texas Supreme Court has given us some guidance on what they expect. Certainly, different families have different concerns based on a co-parent's profession, and I've answered some questions for some of my clients, and I see that floating around. And unfortunately, just like every legal answer, it seems like the answer is it depends. I think to the extent that a co-parent has been exposed to an active case, first off, let me say, I always think that co-parents should try to work it out together. So I think that the co-parent should try to talk and come up with the best plan possible, and that may include some makeup time later. We certainly don't want our children to be exposed. If your co-parent is just working in a setting that makes them potentially exposed, I don't think that that's gonna meet the standard that the courts are looking for right now to modify these orders. Our courts are, if you can imagine, they are having to adapt to this new reality of not having any in-person hearings. Most of them are working on getting electronic access, and attorneys are learning how to do hearings through Zoom. But everybody's getting up to speed on that, and it isn't as efficient as what the courts have been in the past. I think it'll get there, but it's not quite there yet. So right now they're only hearing emergency matters. And the courts have all kind of said, some of this stuff we don't think is quite an emergency. And if parents aren't doing a good job of trying to work it out and cooperating, we'll deal with it when all of this is over. So they kind of said, try to work it out. If it is an emergency situation and you feel like it's an emergency situation, and you have serious concerns, I know some situations, I've got a client that their order requires out-of-state travel. Every situation's a little bit different. So if you have questions, I would just encourage people to talk with their attorney or to give us a call at Duffee and Eitzen, and we can see if we can answer some of those questions about specific circumstances.
Got it. Well, thank you, Jody. I think that was very helpful and very informative to people. And with that, that's the end of our breaking coronavirus questions section. And we are going to move on to our main topic, the financial or property side of divorce. Now, when we say property in the context of a family law matter, what does that mean exactly?
So property is a very broad term. It includes your real property. It includes houses, cars, personal property, things you own. It goes from the big things like your homes all the way down to the little things, all the little stuff we have inside our homes. It also includes our bank accounts, our 401k, our stocks. It can include things that aren't even tangible, such as contract rights or accounts receivable, things that people expect to get in the future. Those may just be property rights that somebody has that you can't actually put your hands on. So the term property, when you talk about division of assets and liabilities in a divorce setting, is a very global term.
Mm-hmm. And you said, and you may have mentioned this already, but you mentioned liabilities, so I assume that the property means both stuff you have and debt. Stuff you
Absolutely.
owe, that is.
Absolutely.
Right? And this is maybe a silly question. Are pets considered property?
Yes and no. We all love our pets. Like there are people, like there are family members, and certainly we do make provisions for pets in our divorce decrees. People can agree. You can ask the court. So they're between. They're not really.
Right.
They're not children. Certainly, we don't treat them with the same kind of provisions that we would our children. But certainly, the court or the parties can make agreements regarding pets.
Right, but it's not going to get factored into property division in the same way. I don't know, a car might. It's not going to be like, we're off putting $3,000 of this house value, and you get the dog instead. Like that's not generally how it works.
The beauty of reaching agreements in divorce is that you can do some of that offsetting. It's hard, I think, to put a monetary value necessarily on a pet.
Right.
So in an overall property division, I'm not sure that you would offset the cost of a pet for another asset, but you might. I mean, when the beauty of reaching agreements with your spouse over how you're going to divide things gives you the flexibility and the freedom to say, the pet's really important to me and I want to keep it. And if that means giving you, the car, then people can do that.
Well, there you go. You learn something new every day. So I think a logical place to begin when discussing the specifics of property in divorce is if someone is preparing for a divorce, if they are either thinking about filing for divorce or if their spouse has filed for divorce, what sort of things should they be doing to prepare their property and their financial records for divorce proceedings?
Well, certainly, if you see that divorce is on the horizon, you want to start the process of gathering your financial documents and information into one place and making sure that you, to the best of your ability, have an understanding of your finances. And I know that a lot of families don't work that way. I know a lot of families, I hear it over and over from people who come to me, that only one spouse in the marriage is responsible for the finances. And I have people come and say, I don't really know. Well, we have ways to deal with that. But to the extent you can, start gathering your information, getting account numbers, getting an understanding of what you have in your accounts, what you have in the way of retirement savings, um, what things you or your spouse, both of you, own. And let me make a point that even if assets are only in your spouse's name, they're still considered community assets, at least presumed to be community assets. And so you want to have an understanding as much as possible of all the accounts and all of the marital estate. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Another thing
And
you want to
sorry, a quick clarification question, and the answer I'm sure is partly it depends. But what is the sort of brief distinction between community property and non-community? Yeah, the distinction between community assets and individual assets in a marriage. How does one determine which is which?
So when the parties get divorced, the court presumes that everything that the parties own at the time of divorce is community. Now, parties can go in and they have the burden, they have to prove it to the court
Mm-hmm.
if they want to claim that something is separate. So, and again, if you want to claim something separate, it's important for you to have the documents to prove that. And
Mm-hmm.
but something that's separate would be something that you owned prior to getting married, or something that you acquired during marriage if it was given to you as a gift, or if it was if you received it through a will or an inheritance. So those are big, broad categories. But remember, let's say you get a house and you've inherited that from your long lost aunt, and you didn't receive it till while you were married. That's going to be presumed to be community property unless you can prove with the documents how that house came to you from your aunt. So that might be through her will, it might be through um, the deed records. So again, having an understanding of um, your records and start putting all of that together to support your claims is important.
Got it. Got it. Good to know. All right. So once all of that sort of the preparatory stage is done and the divorce process begins, what's going to happen to property? I presume there's some measures taken by the court to prevent either side from, say, absconding with it all. Do they? What, can you go into a little bit about that of sort of what restrictions might be placed on people's money or assets during divorce proceedings?
Sure. And let me back up just for a minute. One of the other
Oh,
things I think
absolutely.
that it's important for people to know as they're preparing for divorce is if you're preparing to leave, I mean, you've got to be thoughtful about the fact that all of a sudden, you know, everything you and your husband were earning or you and your wife were earning during your marriage was paying for your home, your bills, and all of a sudden you're going to have a situation most likely where you're going to have to use those same resources to pay for 2 homes and 2 electric bills.
Mm.
And so you've got to be thoughtful about, if you're the one leaving or if you're the one staying, how your resources are going to be used to help pay your bills. I think it's important for people to, if you've got your money, please understand, if your money's going into a joint account, then either party can access that money. And unfortunately, not everybody is above board, and it happens more often than it should. People go into a joint account and they take out all of the money. So what I encourage my clients to do is, before filing, is to set up an individual account that only has your name in it on it, that only you can access, and work with your employer to set up your direct deposit so that the money you're earning is going into an individual account rather than a joint account. And if you need to take out money from that joint account, first off, I know that not all situations, if you are heading towards divorce, not everybody communicates well. Certainly, if you and your spouse can communicate about how that money's going to be split, then do that. But if you're not communicating and you're concerned and you need some of those funds, I encourage people to go into the joint account, but only take out half of the funds. That way you're splitting them. You don't have the allegations from the other side that you were trying to take all their money or, take from the community. So if you're going to go in and access those joint accounts, be fair about that. And you asked what was going to happen during the divorce. So in most counties, they have what's called a standing order, and it's a general order that basically guides people on what they can and can't do with their money during a divorce. It's not all counties have them. Sometimes you have to, an attorney, when you file, goes in and gets what's called a temporary restraining order, temporary injunctions, to put in place those same kind of language. And it basically says, you got to have good behavior. You can't spend all the money. You can't turn off the utilities at someone's home. You can't, go spend thousands of dollars taking a trip, because that's, unless it was something that you normally did. It tries to just keep people behaving as they normally would with their finances while the divorce is pending.
Got it.
So the standing order is going to go in place, and I know people have concerns about, we just talked about how you fund 2 households and have increased fees.
Right.
How you're paying your attorneys. How are we paying these extra bills? And if people can work together to figure that out, that's ideal. Or even through their attorneys, figure that out. If they can't come to some agreements, then you can ask the court to put in place what are called temporary orders. You would go and have a hearing, and the court can set who's going to pay which bill, who's going to live in the house, who's going to drive which car. And one of the things that people can ask for, and often do in temporary orders, is access to community funds. I know some, those households that we just talked about, where one spouse really controls all of the marital assets, the bank accounts. The non-moneyed spouse may have to go into the court and say, I've got to pay my attorney's fees. I've got to be able to live. So I need access to some of those accounts. And even to the extent that they ask the court to order the other party to pay some of their attorney's fees.
Excellent. That was very comprehensive, I think. So obviously, the depending on how the matter concludes, there could be a number of permanent ramifications. I mean, almost certainly will be permanent ramifications on people's finances as a result of their divorce. Obviously, there's going to be property division. That is, the court's going to, as best as possible, figure out whose is what, so that there's, everybody can go on with their individual property into the future. But also there may be things like child support, alimony, other things that may impact people's money and property going on into the future. Could you talk a little bit about some of those possibilities?
Sure. So one of the goals during the process of divorce is to gather information. And that's where the parties, you'll probably be asked by your attorney to prepare an inventory that just outlines all of your assets and your debts, and giving account numbers and VIN numbers for your car, just and then exchanging those. So everybody has all the information they need to either make a decision on settling or to present their proposed division to the court. I tell clients all the time, the more you and your spouse can cooperate in that process of exchanging information, the less money you're going to spend on attorneys.
Mm.
But once you've got all that information, a lot of parties go to mediation and they're able to agree. I think a lot of people think that a court's going to take each asset and divide each asset in half.
Right, King
And
Solomon, the whole thing.
that's right. But really, what happens is once you have a big picture of what all the assets are and what all the debt is, you put all that on a big spreadsheet. And it may be that one person is taking more of the stuff, more of the assets, but they're also taking more of the debt associated with it. So you really come to a bottom line of what does our estate look like? What's our net value? And how is that split between us? It's important for people to realize, and this is where an attorney, it's good to have an attorney advising you on this, because not all assets are the same. They don't all have the same value in the sense that cash is king. If you can get cash assets, there's a time value to money. And so taking dollars in a 401k that you can't necessarily access until later, there's some differences in the way you treat those assets when you're doing this division. So it's important for people to understand the assets that they're agreeing to take on and the debts they're agreeing to take on when they're having these discussions for settlement, and if it's not settled, then understanding what they're asking from the court when they ask the court to divide the property.
Got it. Oh, sorry.
No,
Please continue.
I encourage clients to have these conversations. They need to understand what their money's going to look like after the divorce is over. What not only their resources are going to be, if they're getting child support, that would be part of their resources. They have coming in, the money they have as income, what their expenses are going to look like. And so, working with our clients, it's important for people to understand prior to the divorce, what a budget looks like for them moving forward. And it's important for them to understand when they're agreeing to take on certain assets or debts, how they manage that to either preserve them or best use them to help support themselves.
Right. So to segue off of that, one thing that I think is often helpful for assisting clients in understanding their finances, both before, during, and after the divorce, are financial professionals. And I know that we work with a number of financial professionals in our practice. Why don't you just talk a little bit about the role of financial professionals in the process, and what are some of the qualities of a good one?
And I absolutely agree. In fact, for a lot of my clients, I have them work with financial professionals to help them manage their assets going forward, especially people with complex estates. For example, I had a client that we structured a pretty complex property settlement but it had to be structured such that the couple had a child that had special needs and would have to be supported into adulthood. And there are special rules that you have to think about and look at, so that when you're structuring it, you're not interfering with the disability that they can receive from the government. And so it was important for us to work with a financial professional. And a lot of times, even in situations where a couple is divorcing at an older age, where you may not have as much time to work and put money into your retirement, having someone that can help you understand how to invest your retirement that you'll be receiving, or the stock options that you'll be receiving, to invest those things so that they actually provide for you into your retirement. Because there are a lot of people that they get divorced when they've not worked and they're nearing the end of kind of their period
working
in their life when
lives.
they would be working. That's right. So, it's important to find a good financial professional. We can certainly refer you to one if you don't have one. I know some people already have relationships with financial professionals. There are, and some of the people that we work with specifically have some specific training on divorce and the way that works with the taxes and Social Security and all those issues. So finding somebody that might be have some specific knowledge and understanding of what happens in divorce, I think, is helpful.
There you go. All right, well, we're almost out of time here. For our last section, I like to sort of discuss any pitfalls or what not to do's when it comes to the financial side of divorce. I know you talked about a what not to do earlier of don't empty the entire joint account, just take your half so that you don't get penalized by the court later. Are there any sort of common mistakes or other possibilities for short-sighted bad behavior that you might want to advise people against?
Sure. Well, and we see it all the time. There are people that are so angry, hurt about the end of a relationship that they do whatever they can to hurt the other person. And unfortunately, one way to really hurt another person is with the finances. And I've heard people say, well, I'd rather spend it all than her get any of it, or, I'd rather give it to somebody else. So courts don't look favorably on that behavior. They expect people to be respectful to their spouse. They have a duty to not act in a way that harms the other person and the marital estate, really. So to the extent somebody is going out and all of a sudden just giving away huge chunks of money to relatives or to a girlfriend, if you're going out and you're spending lots of money on your girlfriend, the court is not going to look favorably on that. Both, I encourage people, if the bad behavior is happening, there are mechanisms we can use to address it with the court during the pendency of the divorce, but certainly on a final trial as well. So there's ways that we can address that. And I just encourage people, really, divorce is such a painful, hurtful experience in so many ways. And to the extent you can get through the process, the better you get through the process with the other person, the better it is on the other side.
There we go. I think that's a good note to end on. Do you have any final thoughts? Anything you want to add about our topic for today?
No, there's just so much in the world of finances through a divorce, and we've just scratched the surface
Hmm.
today. But if you have questions and concerns, either about filing or how all of this is going to work, we would be happy to consult with you about representation during your divorce. I do think that a lot of people think, well, my situation's not that complex and I can handle it on my own. And we hear from people day in and day out that did that. And then it costs them more on the other side to fix the things
Hmm.
that they just didn't know. So I do encourage people to hire an attorney to help them through the divorce process. Um, and there's lots of attorneys at lots of different Duffee and Eitzen. One of the things I really like about our firm is that we've got attorneys at all different uh, levels of um, years of experience and price ranges, and we're set up to deal with cases from the simple to the very complex. So
Hmm.
I just encourage people to be thoughtful about hiring an attorney during the divorce to protect themselves.
Wonderful. I think I agree completely, and think that all sounds great. And last but certainly not least, on a slightly lighter note to close us out, what have you been doing to maintain your mental health during this all of this social distancing?
Wow. Well, um, here in Wichita Falls, we have been on a shelter in place just since last Friday. So I know people in the Metroplex, it's been a little bit longer than that.
Hmm.
Um, but even before then, with all the social distancing, I have been trying to get out of the house as much as I can. We live along a beautiful trail here in Wichita Falls. And so I've been out as the weather has allowed and been walking my dog. And I have this fascination right now with all these funny memes. I don't know if it's
Hmm.
just to keep things kind of lighthearted. I've been trading all kinds of group texts with my family all over the country, and we just share all these funny memes and laugh about uh, all the things that are just. I think we're all trying to wrap our head around it right now. So that's what we've been doing here.
Well, that sounds great. And that's going to be it for us here at the DFW Divorce Insider Podcast. Thank you so much for coming on, Jody.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
We appreciate you, and we appreciate all of you out there listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe to our podcast so you'll get every episode right when it comes out. If you'd like to learn more about today's topic, you'll find some links in the description of this episode taking you to some further reading. If you're looking for family law representation in the DFW area or in Wichita Falls, please look us up at www.duffeeandeitzen.com. That's DuffeeAndEITZEN.com, or at dallastxlegal.com. Or you can just type Duffee and Eitzen into Google. You could also send us an email at info@d-elaw.com, or give us a call at 214-416-9010. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, I've been Matthew Eitzen, and this has been the DFW Divorce Insider Podcast. Y'all take care now.